Hello, my name is Miss Hallgarth and welcome to another revision session all about RUAE. This time we will be covering word choice questions at higher level. As we go through this video, please pause at any point to attempt the questions or write some notes. Let's get started. So, the steps. Step 1 and Step 2 are much the same as you would do for any question within your prelim or exam paper. You read the questions carefully and underline the relevant part of the question. At Step 2, you're going to find the relevant line that it mentions in the question and you're going to circle, highlight or indicate that you've found it. Step 3 is where we begin our answer. You would quote the identified word choice related to the question. Then you would list at least 3 connotations of this word after. You would say this connotes to. After that, link it back to the question. Analyse why these connotations suggest what the question is inquiring about. As you can see here, these are example answers for word choice questions. At higher level, you no longer receive a mark for identification. This also extends to the 3 connotations. You must analyse these connotations to the relevancy of the question in order to receive the mark. You will receive a further mark for a more in-depth analysis. So we can see that step 3 is followed. We've quoted the word cheap. And then we go on to say the 3 connotations. This connotes to being tacky, undesirable, and inexpensive. This isn't where we would get our mark. We would get our mark for it saying, this shows how the author believes the clothes were less than desirable and highlights how unhappy he was with the gift, considering it seemed he spent more on his gift to her. This is where we would get our mark. Again, staggering connotes to unstable, not in control, and undignified. We would not get a mark here. In higher, we would get a mark for saying, this shows how the drunken man was clearly not acting very dignified in front of the school children, and the author believed this man was setting a poor example. Here, we would receive our mark. This slide shows you example questions you should look out for in a prelim or exam paper. These questions will vary. Looking at question 8, we see that it asks us to analyse the language used. Word choice is a suitable identification in this case. You can look solely at word choice or decide to look further into the passage for imagery or sentence structure. Question 4 is a specified analysis question. It asks you to look for word choice and sentence structure in your answer. You must make sure to find at least one for both. And finally, looking at question 6, it's much the same as number 8. When it refers to 2 examples, you're able to answer with 3 or 4 to make sure you're receiving that insurance answer. As you can see, making it clear that the writer uses language, you can vary from 3 to 4 marks, sometimes perhaps even 2. If you have an insurance answer though, this enables you to get the marks just in case your identification for word choice is slightly wrong. Top tip time. Word choice answers will not always get you 2 marks for analysis due to the limits of some words. Some words may not have many connotations or room for analysis in comparison to others. This is why we always add an insurance answer if you know that you may be short for that 2 mark analysis award for one quote. Higher is different from National 5. We do have to make sure we're putting insurance answers just in case our analysis falls short of 2 marks and we only receive 1. What we will do now is we are going to go through 2 practice past paper questions. At any point, feel free to pause the video and attempt the question yourself. You can use the steps that you may have paused previously and taken notes from. Once you've unpaused, I'll be going through the answers together so we can see the marking scheme and where we will receive our marks. Practice 1 asks, read lines 21 to 28. By referring to at least 2 examples, explain how the writer uses language to criticise the way the internet is used to communicate information. Firstly, what we need to do is we need to identify the lines that we're looking at because it will be a large piece of text. So I highlight that. I'm looking for lines 21 to 28. Once we've found the lines in the text and we've identified them, what we need to do next is that we need to underline the whole point of the question. I know that this is why the writer criticises the way the internet is used to communicate information. I know that no matter what word choice and connotations I pick out, I must always link back to this information. So I highlight it. That's noting to myself, link back. Because sometimes you will forget in the middle of a paper and exam. So let's read it together. Sometimes stories like these are spread out of panic, sometimes out of malice, and sometimes out of deliberate manipulation in which a corporation or regime pays people to convey their message. Whatever the motive, falsehoods and facts now spread the same way in what is called an information cascade. As one expert describes it, people forward on what they think, even if the information is false, misleading, or incomplete, because they think they have learned something valuable. This cycle repeats itself. And before you know it, the cascade is unstoppable momentum. You share a friend's post on social media, perhaps to show support or agreement, and that you're in the know, and thus you increase the visibility of their post to others. Now what we need to do is we need to go through it and we need to figure out what word choice is. Now sometimes you may get confused. Word choice is when you understand that the author could have used one word, but they've used another. So as we go, I'm going to show you the word choice I picked out. There is more than just 4 pieces of word choice here, but I'm picking out the obvious 4 to myself. So automatically I see that panic is a word that I know I'll be able to find connotations for. I understand it, I know how to connote it, and I know that how I'm going to link that back to how we communicate information. I'm also going to pick malice. Again, I understand what this word means. Sometimes it's easy to pick a word because it sounds big and clever, but if you don't know what the word means, you're not going to be able to possibly connote to it or analyse it and link back. So go for the safe and obvious word choices. I'm going to pick deliberate manipulation. And lastly, I'm going to pick the word unstoppable. I feel confident that all 4 words I'm going to be able to analyse and connote to. So let's go with our first word. Let's go through the first word choice together. So we are picking panic. You can pause the video here and connote 3 things to the word panic now if you want to, and link it back to the point of the question, which is highlighted. Otherwise, I'm going to show you my answer. So panic, I've said it connotes to immediacy, it's unthinking, and it connotes to hysteria. This suggests that the writer believes the internet is a negative thing due to a negative effect it has for those that read false stories, and panic erupts because of it. By doing so, the writer criticises the way the internet is used to communicate information. This is because vague and unchecked information can incite immediate anxiety. So what you've seen that I've done in the second sentence of that second bullet point is I've said the writer criticises the way the internet is used. As you can see, the question is all about the writer criticising the way the internet is used. So I'm repeating the point of the question. I'm making sure I'm linking back at all times. Let's go through the second use of word choice, which is malice. Malice connotes to cruelty, it's calculated, and it is with intent. So I've said that this suggests the writer believes the internet is a negative thing due to the cruel ways it can be intentionally used. There are not rules on who can produce online information to distribute. Because of this, the writer highlights that this shows how this is a criticism of the internet being used. Again, I've linked it back to the fact the way the internet is used is wrong, and this is what the writer believes. The third word that we've identified is deliberate manipulation, or the phrase deliberate manipulation. You can pause it and connote deliberate manipulation, or I'm going to go through the answers now. Manipulation, I said that connotes control, intent, and negative implications. I've linked this back to the question by saying this suggests that the writer believes the internet is a negative thing due to the amount of control and vindictiveness these producers of false information have. It's clear that this level of control shows how the writer criticises the way the internet is used to communicate information. The last piece of word choice we're going to look at here is unstoppable. Unstoppable connotes to the inability to escape. There's an ultimate power there, and there's an undefeated force. I've linked this back to the question by saying that this suggests the writer believes the internet is a negative thing due to the fact that information can be distributed and shared and grow momentum in a way which is unstoppable and seems out of anyone's control. This emphasises the danger of false information being distributed in this way. I've linked it back now by saying this shows how the writer disagrees with the way information is communicated online. I link back to ensure I get the mark. On the next slide, we're going to see all of our answers collated for 1, so you can see how much writing is required for 4 marks. Here are our 4 word choice answers collated together for a 4-mark question. You will notice that we have picked out 4 examples of word choice. Again, 4 is not necessary, but you cannot be too confident and think that just picking out 2 examples of word choice will get you 2-mark analysis for each, which results in 4 marks overall. You want to be putting in insurance answers. Sometimes words such as panic are not very elaborate. You're not going to be able to analyse them too deeply. Thus, you may not get the 2-mark analysis for this. You may only get 1. This is why we want to bring in other words such as unstoppable and manipulation for insurance answers to ensure that we're getting the 4 marks. The SQA marking scheme is on your screen on the left-hand side. This is taken directly from the marking scheme. As you can see, they are bullet pointed. Now, the analysis will not be in the marking scheme purely because the marking schemes are so large. We are looking for the analysis. The SQA are pointing out the words that they will accept for word choice. So we're going to go along the marking scheme and see how many words we were able to identify and analyse well. If you look at the first bullet point, it says panic. This suggests a hysterical reaction caused by online use. We have answered panic, and our analysis talks about hysteria and the fact that people panic. So we are getting the mark. If you look at the second bullet point on the left-hand side of the screen, we've identified malice. Our answer suggests that it's being intentionally used. Their answer scheme says that there's vindictiveness there. We know that we've talked about that, so we would give ourselves the mark. Nextly, if you look down to the third bullet point, you'll see deliberate manipulation. We too have answered deliberate manipulation, so we know that we're going to get the mark. And if you look at the second last bullet point, way down at the bottom of the left-hand screen, you'll see unstoppable. We also answered with unstoppable, with a larger bit of analysis, hoping to get maybe 2 marks for the analysis there. So we are going to give ourselves the mark. This is how you would be able to get 4 out of 4 at higher level for word choice. Here is another top tip. If you are in the exam and you are panicking and you're struggling to remember connotations for a certain word, just ask yourself, is this word a positive or negatively connoted word? You can use this for one of your 3 connotations. This will also help steer your answer and link back. We have worked through practice 1 together. Perhaps you were unsure and a little bit unconfident in using your steps for word choice. Now, going over the answers and the repetitive should have helped you remember the 3 steps. You're going to quote, you're going to connote, and then you're going to link back. Feel free to pause the practice 2 at any point and attempt the questions yourself. Again, I will be going through the questions and the answers regardless, so you can pause and then you can see if you got them right. Let's start. Practice 2 says, read lines 31 to 42. By referring to both word choice and sentence structure, analyse how the writer creates a negative impression of adults. Now, before we begin, you must notice in the question it says word choice and sentence structure. In order to get full marks for a question like this, you must be able to share those marks equally amongst word choice and sentence structure. You must identify both. For the sake of this practice, because we're looking solely at word choice, how to answer and how to analyse and link back, we're only going to be identifying word choice today. However, if you want to practice sentence structure, feel free to include these in your answers. Now let's start with our steps. The first step was to identify the lines that we must refer to. So I do this. I say that I know that lines 31 to 42 are important, so I must identify this in the question and the text alike. Once I've done that, I need to remember I need to underline the point of the question, highlight the point of the question. Here it is how the writer creates a negative impression of adults. Let's begin reading. Of course, it would be naive to suggest all teenagers can be accomplished as Malala. However, there is in fact considerable evidence that the unfinished brain can be pretty good at sport, music, creating computer software, and raising thousands of pounds for charity. True, 16-year-olds can be rude, sulky, reckless, and unreliable, but the adult world is scarcely exempt from these characteristics. Perhaps, as politicians must hope, most teenagers know too little about politics to make self-congratulatory comparisons between themselves and at times limited brain power to show during parliamentary debates. The evidence of their own eyes confirms that, when considering normal behaviour, 16-year-olds barely compete in terms of incivility, tantrums, profanity, impulsivity, prejudice, time wasting, and an undefying dependency on tabloid websites, when compared to millions of fully enfranchised grown ups. If lawmakers ever think of restricting voting by inadequately brained, illiterate, non tax-paying, or ignorant, the consequences for some adults would be chilling. As you can tell, there is a number of word choice that we can pick out. So if I pick out 4, please do not panic. Your 4 would probably be absolutely acceptable as well. We're going to go through the 4 I've picked out now. So the first one I've picked out is scarcely. That's the one that jumps out to me first. I know this word, I know what it means, I'm going to be able to connote it 3 times. The next is the phrase limited brain power. This one will be quite easy to connote, in my opinion. The next one is tantrums. I know that this links back to immaturity. I'm going to pick it because it's going to be easily to connote. And lastly, time wasting. That one jumps out to me, so I underline that. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each word, the connotations, and how we can link back to the question. If you want to pause and attempt these 4 word choice questions yourself, the 4 words I've highlighted, please feel free to do that. So, as you can see at the bottom, I've put scarcely. I've said that this connotes to little, none at all, and non-existent. I've said this shows how the writer is suggesting that there is little difference between a teenager's negative characteristics and an adult's. The writer believes there is every chance an adult can be rude and sulky. Thus, this creates a negative impression of adults to the reader. As you can see, a negative impression is a phrase that's mentioned in the question, which I've underlined. I've wanted to link that back in my answer. Now we go on to limited brain power. As you can see at the bottom, I've put limited brain power connotes to being intelligent, dumb, and an inability to be smarter. So this shows how the writer believes that some adults do not hold the capacity to learn or further themselves intelligently. This highlights that just like teenagers, some adults lack an ability to think for themselves in a productive way. This shows how the writer has a negative impression of adults. Again, I've used the phrase negative impression. Notice each time I'm doing this, I'm saying, quote, connote, this shows. If you keep to that equation, you will be able to get at least 1 mark. Next, I've picked tantrums. I say tantrums connote to being impulsive, acting undignified, and uncontrolled. I've said this shows how the writer believes that adults outshine teenagers when expressing their upset and acting without dignity or self-awareness of how young and immature they may look. This ensures the reader understands the negative impression the writer is trying to create for adults, as it is a disapproving and negative word. And finally, we're going to go on to time wasting. This connotes to carelessness, it's nonchalance, and a lack of drive. This shows how the writer believes that adults spend a lot of their time avoiding work, more so than teenagers. When elaborating on this negative word, it is clear that the writer believes adults lack the ability to commit and complete tasks. This shows how there is a negative impression being created here about adults. Here you can see what your answer will look like on your question paper once you collate all 4 word choice answers. You can see here that we are using 2 bullet points for our quote, connote, and this suggests or this shows. We're going to go on to the next slide in a second to show you what the SQA marking scheme will look like and how we can get the mark. What I do suggest you doing with a word choice and sentence structure question, say it was word choice and imagery or word choice and tone, is you'd subheadings like the marking scheme shows, to separate your word choice and sentence structure answers. The SQA marking scheme has subsections such as word choice for us to mark. This is on the left-hand side. What we're going to do is we're going to go along the bullet points and see if any of the bullet points match our own answers. If you look at bullet point 1, you can see scarcely is identified here. This was our first answer. I put scarcely. The marking scheme says it suggests a scathing condemnation of adult failings. I've put that in so many words by saying that the writer believes there's every chance an adult can be rude and sulky too. So I give myself the mark. In the second bullet point, we say that there's limited brain power, so that phrase there, and it shows a lack of intelligence. Our answer says limited brain power, and again, we've said that's unintelligent. It means that they have an inability to get smarter for themselves at that age. So we give ourselves the mark. If you go down to the fourth bullet point, you'll see the word tantrums. It suggests being immature or outburst of temper. I've highlighted that in my own answer here, so I give myself the mark. And lastly, if you look at the third last bullet point down, time wasting is identified. Again, I have identified time wasting myself, so I give myself the mark. This brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for listening along and partaking in the revision tasks. I hope this has helped you understand word choice questions a little bit better. Please remember to give this video a like, subscribe for more revision content, and have a great week, everybody.